was like, oh, when I first listened to it, I thought of this is sad boy rock. And I was like, yeah, because like rock is emotive, right? You can find
Right.
every emotion for it. And I feel like traditionally I grew up with very emotional music.
Well, this podcast is about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Whoa, thank
Um,
you.
I did see, you're in New York? Is that what I saw earlier when I was
Yes,
reading up
yes.
on you? Okay, cool. Are you born and raised in New York?
No, I'm South African actually.
Oh, talk to me about that.
Migrated to New York. Yes, so I like grew up in South Africa and like desert area of South Africa. So if you ask me where in South Africa, it's not Cape Town, it's not Johannesburg, it's not Durban, it's just the desert, it's remote. It's near a country called Botswana.
Hmm.
Like I just grew up on a farm there. Yeah.
What was that
And
like? What kind of farming did your family do?
with cattle ranches,
Oh, okay.
really.
Really
Yeah.
cool.
It's a tribal thing. So I'm Botswana,
Okay.
but from South Africa, and where cattle ranches in general. So yeah, it was pretty. I mean, I still love the country.
Uh-huh.
Even though I live in the city, but I'm like a country girl at heart.
Was that a
Really,
shock? That must
I
have been a
love
shock going to
everything.
New York, right? I mean, from a little farm town.
True. I sort of. I suppose. I read a lot, so I'd already kind of read up on it, and I think I've watched When Harry Met Sally a million
Okay.
times. you know,
So you could kind of like you knew what you were in for when you got there. Sounds like. Oh, it's
I
to
mean,
an extent.
no one knows what, right? um,
Well, you knew there was going to be
you
millions
can
of people
never
around
really
you, I
know.
guess.
Right. So that was very different.
Mhm.
Even though still I'm kind of like a lone ranger. So in New York, you can be
Mhm.
amongst so many people and still be by yourself in a way.
Sure.
So yeah.
All
So
right.
still, it's pretty magical. I think I still think so now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, oh my gosh, yeah, that looks like a movie. Oh yeah, that scene looks like a movie. Oh my god,
Yeah,
still.
and they were
So,
all probably in a movie at one point in time, right?
right, I suppose.
uh,
Or other movies like depict them to be,
sure.
exactly what New Yorkers are. So it's
What was
pretty
it?
cool.
So, when did you move to New York? How old were you?
About 17. But I was
17.
in Connecticut first, and then I moved to New York. And I was just
Okay.
like, oh, great. I love it. I really, really loved it. That's where I actually started writing for the first time, I think.
In Connecticut?
Yeah. So, like, when I got to the US, I bought a guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, I'm going to backpack and like do what people do. Well, then they move to another country. And then I just like left it for 2 years, and I just totally forgot about it. And then,
So you
and I
came
don't
to the
know.
States to backpack? That's funny because we people from the United States usually go to Europe to do backpacking, and it's like you go to a city, and you're like, well, there's really nowhere to not a lot of places to backpack around Connecticut, New
Right,
York, I would think.
right. I it didn't matter. I was just
Right.
like, I'm going to do what like people do, when they go to another country. It didn't even
Sure.
matter. So I was just like, I need a guitar for it. It just
Okay.
never happened. So yeah,
That's
it's
funny.
pretty cool.
Well,
It's funny now that you say that. When I was in Germany, I'm at the store, so I find a TJ Maxx, which is it's called TK Maxx in Germany, in Berlin.
instead of
Same
TJ Maxx, it's called TK. Is it the same type of store?
thing.
Okay. So
Just
you just
with
go,
better clothes,
oh,
like just
wow.
better designer, like European designer clothes.
That's
Way
cool.
better. Right,
At discount
but
prices.
at discount prices. And the gentleman there was like, "Oh my goodness, I love your dress." I was like, "Oh, thank you." He's like, "Are you on safari?" I was like, "I suppose." I mean, I was in Berlin. He was
Yeah,
like, "Where
you're
are you
like,
from?" And I was like, "I'm from South Africa. I live in the US." And he was like, "Oh, it's such a beautiful dress. Are you on safari?" And I was like, I guess so. I mean, if
Like,
safari
I
is
don't even
like
know what that means.
visiting a place,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose, German, cool. I thought it was pretty cool because it might
Okay.
be like you're visiting, coming to see Germans. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So,
Okay.
I suppose when I was in Connecticut, I was on safari in the American. I don't. I have
I'm
no
gonna start
idea.
using that instead of like, some people say I'm gonna go on holiday, I'm gonna go on vacation. I'm just gonna start
Yeah,
saying I'm gonna go on safari and see if
I'm
people
going
just
on
pick that up. I
safari.
like that.
Yeah, yeah. They'll be
Oh,
really weirded out.
they're
But
like, what the
anyway.
hell is this guy talking about? Uh, well, prior to getting to Connecticut, I want to hear that story. But before that, were you into music at all? As far as like, were you singing? Were you playing an
No.
instrument? Like, how did music surround you?
So I grew up with a lot of singing everywhere because South
Okay.
Africans sing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
They're beautiful singers, and in general, like once you start a song, people will join you in harmony. And
Okay.
so I just grew up with a lot of people in the house. My parents are in the church, and
Mm-hmm.
like there were always a lot of people. They're also community organizers and activists. So we grew up with a lot of people in the house, and everyone like sang really well. I actually didn't sing. I usually have an intense allergy when I'm in South Africa. So like even when we're, during the pandemic, I actually thought I didn't have a voice because I was quarantined in South Africa. And so,
Oh, wait.
growing
Okay.
up,
We'll,
I
we'll
didn't
get to
think I
that
had a
part
voice.
too.
Right, right. Growing up, I didn't think I actually had a singing voice at all.
Okay.
So I just kept quiet. And then I got, to the US, and I was like, oh, I can breathe. I can breathe okay, I suppose. And I, I just wrote music um, to just release like certain things, just,
Mhm.
certain things in my life. And it was really, I always write in general, but I just like wrote my first song, first full song, and I was like, oh, I can write more, and that
Mhm.
was Killer, which is going to be on the upcoming record.
Oh, that was
So
the first
yeah,
song you ever wrote.
first full song I ever written, which was pretty
Wow.
cool. And you know what? It wrote itself.
Huh.
So I was pretty happy about it. Like everything, melody, words, lyrics, all at once, just wrote themselves, which was really great. So I was like, oh, I'm going to wait for something else to show up. But I when I got to the US, obviously my voice, like my throat calmed down. I'm asthmatic, and also like I have a lot of allergies.
Oh.
And so I was like, okay, maybe I can tell a friend and ask a friend to sing this, or like ask a couple of people. And they were just like, we don't,
Hmm.
you don't write music. So I was like,
Right.
okay, I suppose I have to sing these so that they know. Um, and kind of that's where it started from in terms of writing. And then I just had all of these like really great opportunities. And it's because of luck, really, because I was South African. Some person needed a South African singer for whatever reason, and I just showed up in the right place, and I didn't know what I was doing, and they hired me to do some professional things. So it was really, really like, yeah,
But
cool.
I mean, how many people are from South Africa that can't sing, right?
Exactly. Well, right. I mean, I think
I mean, there are.
all South Africans.
I have a neighbor growing up that moved my like three houses up from us. They're from South Africa, and they couldn't
Oh,
sing.
I suppose. I mean, it really.
Yeah.
What tribe are they? This is my
Uh,
question.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. They live up like three or four houses up from my parents' house when I was growing up. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
They moved
If they just
here. I
like
mean, they moved
Native
here
African or
later.
like Afrikaners, white South African?
They're from South. They're South African. I don't know where abouts.
Okay.
They moved here for. They're like escaping what was going on there. I mean, at the
Okay,
time.
I see. They
I
can't
don't. I don't
sing.
know the whole backstory, and I
Oh,
don't
they've
want to
been gone
screw it
too
up.
long.
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
this and I've been gone too long.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess there
Stay
was
long enough.
a lot happening, and they were like pretty worried and scared. And the company he worked for was able to, I don't know, he was able to get out, and then it was difficult for him to find work in the States, and he ended up, I don't know.
Oh,
It's been a whole thing for them,
right.
but super nice
Yeah,
family.
it's been like that for a lot of people. But
Hmm.
I mean, a good amount of also what I write were the experiences of my family and I through that time. And to be honest, I was born at a later stage,
Hmm.
at the end of it. So yeah, there's a lot of like what I write also is about that and in general justice issues.
Sure, sure. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
mean, he was much older than, I mean, their family is much older. I mean, they had to be
I see, I see.
50. I mean, when they got here, it was
Yeah,
like,
they were exiled
yeah, exactly,
there.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they
That's a
got,
lot of South Africans were. Yeah.
yeah, and they were able to make it to, we lived in San Diego, and they lived, yeah, or they
Oh,
live a
yeah.
couple of houses up the house, up the street from my parents, and they're great people and come to
Wow.
parties in our neighborhood or whatever. But yeah, it was interesting. I didn't really understand the story behind it, and one day he kind of told me like, yeah, like we, had to
Yeah,
leave, and we are exiled from the country, and now we live here, and he
yeah.
was working like odd jobs just because it was hard to get work, because I mean did something with I can't remember. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he made it here, and they've been here in my parents' neighborhoods for a while. But
Oh, sweet.
anyway, well, how did you get? What took you to the United States? Like, how did you? Like, why did you choose
Um,
to come to Connecticut? Like, what was that transition like?
I finished school early, like farm kids do.
Hmm.
I was homeschooled, so I finished school early, and then I kind of signed up for a 6 month like college exchange thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I just went to Fairfield University for a while, and yeah, and then I, you know, I
When you
filled
got
up
there,
stuff and I
did you go to
stayed.
study music, or did that kind of just happen? You said by
No,
like accident almost,
well,
when somebody needed a singer.
yeah, that was completely by accident. I just happened to be in Times Square,
Uh-huh.
and there was another South African. So there are not a lot of South Africans in the US in general. Like South
Hmm.
Africa's really far. No one's like traveling anywhere far. Um,
Right.
so it was, like we kind of all know each other, or rather we find out about each other, like you said about this gentleman.
Hmm.
And so she was the only other South African who spoke my language. So South
Oh.
Africans like speak different languages. And
Uh-huh.
so I was like, oh my gosh, of course. And so once in a while I'd meet up with her in New York City, and I just happened to be there in New York. And she's like, I'm in New York too. Come and meet me at this theater. And I just went to this theater, and that happens to be the Minskoff Theater, where like the Lion King runs out of,
Oh, wow.
the Lion King Theatre, right? So she was there, and she was auditioning for something. It wasn't for the Lion King; it was for something else completely. And I just happened to be there waiting for her, and they were like, "Oh, come in! Can you sing? You're South African. You can come in and sing." And I was just like, "No, don't, not me." And after everyone had gone through, they like still came back, and they were like, "You should come and sing. You should try. You should just." And so I
Hmm.
went in and I sang for them, and they hired me on the spot for like this really famous South African trumpeter who was also exiled, by the way, in the US,
Oh,
Hugh
wow.
Masekela, right? And it was like my first ever professional gig, and I just got so many like opportunities from that. You know, people would be like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, there's this girl.
Yeah, he did like
If you need,
Letterman, right? And in
you're
different,
right,
yeah,
yeah."
Grammy records and
It's wild. I was just like,
wow.
what's going on? you know,
Yeah,
it
something
also
you
really
totally
helped
weren't
me.
really going. I mean, really at the time
Yeah,
pursuing, I would imagine, right?
yeah, not at all. I was just like, once I learned how to play guitar, I was
Uh-huh.
happy to like, be like one of those people who goes to work and then on Friday plays at like the local bar,
Hmm.
and then just like I I'd be okay. I would have been just perfectly fine, to be like that type of a person. And I was just like, okay, cool, I can play guitar, maybe I can just like play by myself and, you know, enjoy the things I write. But because of all of those opportunities, like, you know, people just started booking me for gigs, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
have you
so
always been, because your sound is like more of like an alt rock, like kind of a punk sound behind
yeah,
it. Have you always been
yeah.
into that
So
style of music?
I kind of have always been,
Mm-hmm.
but never been in the spaces of, you know. So
Okay.
I felt like I felt I felt like when I first wrote Killer, I
Mm-hmm.
wrote it in that style, you know. And so it was like natural for me to write it that way. It's just that, you know, because I was hired by African musicians. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, thank God, like, you know, I made some money, you
Right.
know, just
I
being
mean,
a normal person and being able to
right.
gig. So because of that, and
Uh-huh.
also because I got to explore so much of that music, I was like, oh, maybe I should do that because I write this particular thing and maybe people won't accept me. Do you know? Like I was just going through all of these, like, I they Africans are going to think I don't know who I am, even though I think rock is African. So it's just like I'm just doing
Right.
this kind of thing of African music that maybe we're not like really concentrating on in particular,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like because I
Sure.
write from that perspective, even though it is rock. I
Mm-hmm.
think rock comes from that. So
Oh, sure.
I'm
It
just
all
like,
comes out of the blues and everything else, right? I mean, it's
right.
all back and but yeah, I didn't know, just because coming from South Africa I didn't know if there was a whole lot of rock and roll scene there, or you kind of embraced that once you got to the United States.
So it's funny. I grew up in a place where there were these it was like there's like just a group of people who it's just a scene, you know,
Uh-huh.
and they do their thing and everyone's just like those weird kids. And do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
we
like the
grew up
artsy
with them,
kids.
right? They were like all punk. It was really, really intense,
Okay.
you know, and it was a group of them and they were like leather jackets and like, you know, and these are all like African children. I'm not talking
Mm.
about like white South Africans. Like I'm just talking about African
Right.
children in like, you know, and so they were always these I thought okay people, but everyone's just like, oh, those kids are really bad. Oh, those kids are really
Oh,
bad
yeah.
kids. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they used to just like blast music and hang out, you know, at this one guy's house, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, just, you know, really terrible kids. So you kind of didn't want to explore that, even though you might have liked the music. So I just didn't. It it didn't matter, you know, to me until I was just like, okay, now I can listen to what I want to. Now I'm a little bit grown up. Now, you know, I can play what I want to play, kind of a thing. Yeah, it's not something that is naturally, you know, music that people listen to. Not really, in South Africa.
Okay.
But I do think that our traditional music is typically warrior music, and rock reminds
Mhm.
me of it. And
Oh,
you know what I
sure.
mean? So a lot of like our rhythms and polyrhythms and the way we tap our feet and like just mannerism in terms of when we play our traditional music, when we sing it at home, and the way we depict it is just rock for me. You know, some
Hmm.
people might be like, oh, it's just traditional music. But for me, it sounds, I hear it in that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So that,
I
I
know it's
mean,
weird.
no, 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 that makes sense. I mean, it's probably more an aggressive undertone behind some of it. I mean, I don't know.
So not necessarily
Huh.
aggressive,
Not, I mean,
more
like,
um
uh, yeah, sorry, that was wrong. I mean, not aggressive, but like oomph behind. I don't know how to explain.
passionate.
Passionate. That's a good word.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically just really, really a lot of passion behind it, and a lot of meaning behind it. And I
Hmm.
find also that like rock tends to be that, you know.
Hmm.
I was playing in Nashville, and we like got our friend Stephen J. Push. He's also a musician. Like, you know, put together like a drummer for us, and we were like rehearsing at his place. And the drummer was like, "Oh, you know, when I first listened to it, I thought of this is sad boy rock." And I was like, yeah, because like rock is emotive, right? You can find every emotion for it. And I feel like traditionally I grew up with very emotional music. You know, and so like I was like, yeah, I suppose it is sad boy rock, even though I'm a girl, but it's okay. I make sad boy rock. Yeah,
that's
anyway,
funny.
yeah.
So did you write Killer in when you were living in Connecticut, or was that when you made it back down to New York?
It was at first when I was living in Connecticut.
Okay.
And then everything else was just like New York, you know?
Okay. So you went from Connecticut to why did you go down to New York? Just the bigger scene there?
Because I could walk.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, you have to drive everywhere in Connecticut. But I remember once I bought this car from a friend of mine, and after I got stuck, I decided that day I need to figure out how to move to New York City, even though I really love New York anyways.
Right.
But I was like, I need to go now. I just like really love walking and New York City. Right. And I mean, I can think, I think of everything. I've cried.
It's a lot less stressful, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're not like, oh, I hate driving, to be honest.
I hate driving. I hate driving anywhere in the world. I mean, New York, I can't even imagine. I'm always just like, why are people driving? Why do people want to buy cars in New York City? It's just too much. So
it doesn't make any sense. Where are you going to park the thing? Right? And it's just like,
I mean, on a snow day, and you have to move the car, and you have to,
oh my
God. It's
I lived in San Francisco for like a few years, and the first thing I did was like, well, I'm selling this car. I'm paying insurance and all this other crap on it. And it's not even moving. Like, no, I'm done. And I have to move it just so it didn't get towed. Like, let's get out of here. Yeah.
I just love walking.
That's awesome. Well, you talked about you were back in South Africa, like what, for quarantine or something? Like, is that what you said?
Right.
Okay, so tell me about getting from New York back to why go back? Well, obviously, aside from the fact that New York was like the absolute mecca of everything that was happening at the time, and it was always on TV, and you said you're asthmatic. Like, I'm sure that was just a whole combination of anxiety in itself.
It was crazy. It was really good though, because we needed quarantine to make more music. I don't know. Okay. So to have content before, I wouldn't tell you I have 3 albums ready. Do you know what I mean? Like, now I can be like, hey, I have 3 albums ready, which is
wow,
which is huge, for me. And so even though I have a song bank of things, but we've never had time to actually, complete certain things and be ready and just be ready, And so quarantine, actually, so I was supposed to be back. We came to South Africa to record with an amazing guitarist here. So I told you I come from the desert, and he comes from the desert, same town, and an amazing drummer. And he's a rocker. Like, if you've ever, he's unbelievable. I do rock, but that guy is, Mr. Vic is amazing. He's like the most amazing guitarist. I said to him, when you get to New York, you're going to leave me. Every band is going to want you. It's just great. He's so amazing. He hears things. I don't know. He makes noises and sounds and melody, and it's shocking. So we had to come and record with him. And the pandemic hit, and I could see it coming. And so I was just like, okay, I'm staying. I actually hadn't spent time with my family in a very long time. So I kind of stayed in South Africa and got really sick.
Oh, you did?
But I just get sick in South Africa in general, which is sad, but I tried to manage it. At some point, I did think my voice was gone. I was like, oh, I've been lying to people. They're going to find me out. I don't have a voice, I've been lying all along. So I was so afraid. And then I got back to New York. I was like, oh, thank God, my voice is back. I'm okay. But then I was quarantined in South Africa, and then like Kevin was here, Kevin, my co-producer, and friend, and my brother. And so he came to South Africa too, and then we went to Colombia to quarantine there, and we did music videos in Colombia, in Medellin, which was really cool.
Whoa!
Yeah.
What decided?
Yeah.
Why you just were like, you know what? Well, let's just go to Colombia. That sounds like was there a plan behind that? I mean, you obviously had to come up
Um,
with a reason to head there.
so I don't know whether you would say there's a plan behind it. So the record itself, I'd written it going like to South Africa, and I went to Ireland first, and then I wrote part of the record there. And I went to Turkey, and then I wrote part of the record there. And then I went to South Africa, and then it was just like, okay, let's go to Germany. So we wrote a good amount of songs in Germany and Belgium. And then, like, it just, I mean, I was in South Africa, and then we just felt like, okay, I've done South Africa, and so I'm doing a lot of like work in mining in South Africa with like my family's mines and all of the issues behind it, and trying to resolve that. But it also became a lot for me at the same time. So like once it calmed down and the pandemic calmed down just a tad, we also had this deadline of having music videos, of figuring it all out. So we just like, there were plans before the pandemic, believe me, Adam. We had plans. And all the plans disappeared.
Right. Then it's like, let's regroup.
what are we doing? So instead of like being back in New York, we're there for just like a couple of days to get vaccinated, and then went to Colombia, and just met really cool people there. We just made videos,
shot some videos. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so the
really
record's coming out what, in 10 days or so? The 11th, is that what I read?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the story behind the title?
Life of Margaret Cornelius.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with Margaret Cornelius. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
So on the record is a song called Saint Margaret, which is about my mother, who's a saint.
Oh, it is. Okay. Is she really? That's awesome.
She is
in your eyes. Oh, wow.
In everyone's eyes, who she I mean, I grew up being, to be honest, a saint.
That is so cool.
Yeah, she's a really, really amazing person. And so I'd written that song having like moved to the US and just like having trouble, like struggling. And just, because like when I call my mother, everything calms down. You know what I mean? So she doesn't have money or anything to give me to sort my problems out. Right. But like, if I spoke to her, like every time I call her, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive New York City. I'm just going to, survive everything. So that song's there. And my father's name is Cornelius. Right. So normally, like native South Africans, or rather native Africans in South Africa, we have our like names which are from our different like ethnic groups. But during apartheid, people had to have what you call Christian name. Which is an English name, really. So,
sure. Right.
So my mother's name is Margaret, and my father's name is Cornelius. So I just written the record about leaving trouble, or rather getting away from trouble, like finding peace. Like the record in general is about that, about like, yeah.
The struggle peace, within, like, finding peace in the struggle within leaving South Africa.
A different
or
struggle.
Just in general, just struggles in general.
In general. So there's a song called Trouble, which actually sums up the whole record. So my tribe, which is Botswanas, are known to have left wars thousands of years ago with other tribes to move to the desert. where no one wanted to live. So we chose the desert area where like no one just wanted to live, just so that we don't fight with anyone. So we're not particular like fighters. We just we're
You're
we'll
like, we're
bother
going to the
you, but we won't
desert.
fight.
Leave me alone.
Right. And then like when we got to the desert, we found diamonds and gold and all of these things. And so like the record was written out of, because you know we talk about this a lot, just to say like, you know, find your desert, you know, like leave the trouble, find your desert type of a thing. You might find great things kind of a thing. So
I love
the
that.
records, is written out of like that perspective, really.
That is cool. That's wow. I mean, to be like, you know what, we're heading to the desert, right? You know, we don't want to be around all this. And then the amount of resources and everything that you find there is unbelievable. It's like
amazing.
one of the most precious things that people, I mean, diamond, right? Yeah. People want, you buy a diamond for this big
gases,
and it's 10 grand. Wow.
Yeah. So it was written like out of that perspective, like that we grew up being told, you know, try and leave trouble, like just try and like, you know, let it go, move on. So
was it therapeutic writing the record?
Yes, I write a lot.
Okay. Oh yeah, you said you have like 5 albums ready, right? Or 3 albums ready?
Authorize myself. Yes. I write a lot. Like there's like 8 records ready, you know, like 8 albums ready somewhere out there, but we just recorded 3.
You recorded 3 already? They aren't just ideas, like you went in and put down 3 records worth of material?
During the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
During quarantine. Yes.
That is crazy.
I know. It's so great. I'm so happy about it. Because before I didn't have any content, anything to like say, you know, we've got this, like, you know. So it makes me really happy, like just thinking about it.
That is amazing. What are you most excited about for the record to come out? Because I'm looking just on your Spotify that you have Canary out. That's like what the only song from the record that's currently out, right?
Right. We have Trouble coming out as a single next week before the record.
Okay.
So that's really good. I'm looking forward to that. But just like in general, Happier is the first song on the record. It also has like an intro to the record. And so it's just really, really cool. I'm looking forward to just like having people enjoy it, and, you know,
just having it out there.
And it's pretty cool.
Very cool. Sorry, I don't know what just happened here. This got all weird. I gotta mess with my compressor. I think it just blew out a speaker, but it's all good. Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Cool tattoos. What is that?
Yeah, it's from an album cover. It's just some weird heads and a chick holding a knife, and I don't know, weird faces. You know, when you're young and you know hate the world.
It's great. It can remind you of your youth. It's good.
Right. But then I have my grandfather's signature on my wrist, so that it evens it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Pretty neat.
Well, yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, Tuelo. This has been great.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
You know, my advice is always be okay with the uncomfortable, as you're okay with the really good. I think dig in, you know.